Yesterday we talked about basic Hibernate example, right? Basic Hibernate example to learn Spring War. Spring given integration support. To understand that, first the basics of Hibernate we understand. How the parameters will be stored into the database when we use Hibernate. Basically, whatever data we get from the front end or from the user, we keep it into a POSO class from our DAO, and we give that POSO class to session, and the session will take care of inserts, updates, deletes, selects, and all. Mainly three important classes that we have in Hibernate architecture. Those are configuration class. One is configuration class, which is Hibernate container, and one is session factory, which is like a session pool, like your data source connection pool, and the other class is session. From session factory we can get it. Three important classes: configuration, session factory, session. Configuration, session factory contains the sessions. So session only will help you to do the CRUD operations. End of the day you need a session object. End of the day you need a session object to do any set of CRUD operation. So as soon as you pass your object into the session methods, based on the method, right, it will do CRUD operation. If it is a save method, save. Insert operation. If it is a update method, update operation. For delete operations, like such, it will execute on your database. Okay. And we saw one example also yesterday with one student table. Session mode to be reset. Okay, so this record we inserted yesterday, and this is the table. Table is having one primary key and three non-primary key varchars: student name, student email, and student address. Let me drop this table, or else before dropping it, once again let me insert one more new record. Okay, let me open it and insert a record here. Hibernate XML approach. We created one bean class equivalent to, not exactly equivalent, but whatever fields you want to map, right? That fields compulsory you should maintain here. For example, ID, name, email only I want to map. At least that ID, name, email you should have here. Your table may have extra columns, hundreds columns, thousand columns, and it is not mandatory that you need to map all the columns. But at least primary key column and other columns which are important to you for your application, you can maintain them. Let's say if you have a registry, school registry, there a few parameters may be mandatory, like child name, his father name, mother name, and address. Maybe some optional parameters we might have. Okay, so if table contains optional properties, and if you don't want use them in your application, you need not to maintain them in your bean class. But primary key and which are important, that columns you can maintain here. So I want to map all the columns: ID, name, email, address. So I created four columns here, and you need to create immediately one mapping file. There you need to map your bean class to this bean class to your table, and each property: ID I want to map to student ID, name I want to map to student name, email to email, address to address. When column names are different than your bean names, you need to maintain this column here. If your bean column name, bean property name, and your table column name, when both are same, you need not to use this column attribute here. Okay. And finally, we have created a configuration file for maintaining connections, connection properties, and Hibernate dialect property. Hibernate, when we use session.save or update, it is generating SQL query internally, right? Which database understandable query it will generate? It depends on your dialect. So based on this dialect, your Hibernate query generator will understand, okay, I need to generate queries for Oracle database. If it is a MySQL, you need to mention MySQL dialect here so that your query engine will understand that I need to work on MySQL. So MySQL understandable queries it will generate. And HBM to DDL auto, when I put validate, just it will validate your table properly mapped to this, your bean properly mapped to this table, and this table is existed or not. It will check. And show SQL it will show the internal generated SQL queries. Query generator will generate, right? That queries it will show to you. And this is the mapping file that you need to attach here, because finally you are loading this configuration only. As I said, right? Three important classes. So first, starting Hibernate container, loading a configuration file, then building a session factory. By this time, when you build a session factory, all the validations, everything will be finished, and the connection pool also will be created by this time. Now I want to save student data, so I have taken one student object and inserted it. Let me put one more object, and I want to save this record as well. So let's save it. Save is commented. Okay, let's uncomment it. Begin transaction, save it, commit transaction. So data inserting successfully. So maybe you can select it. So now I have two records, student ID, student name. Now let me drop this table. Drop table. Table is deleted. Let me create table again without primary key. Okay, just a simple table. Casually I am creating without primary key. Okay, table also created now. If I select data now, there will be no record because we deleted and recreated a table. Let's try to insert this record or any record and see will it work if your table doesn't contain any primary key. Now, is it working? Insert into table, table values, student ID number. It's not primary key. Okay, what if I insert one more record? One more record got created. Let me insert one more. Okay, so it is able to creating it. Isn't it a problem? Let me see. Now try to select session dot select record 2. Okay, we have three records in DB. What if I select this same record? Load method, get method given to select one record. I started getting exceptions. More than one row with the given identifier was found. So this is the problem. We'll see why first that is inserting. In general, it will not encourage to use. More than one row with the given identifier was found. So this problem you will be getting. In case if you don't have any particular identifier, how you can select during the delete or update cases, we need to find out the record first. Select a record with identifier. So that strategy you will be missing if there is no primary key. So you may update some others record while updating by considering this is my ID. If I try to update Navin record, it will update all other records as well. So see how update scenario will work here in this case. I will call update method, just giving 2, and in my record I want to update from HYD to something food. I want to update my record. Okay, now try to update it. Update system student code. Query is executed. Check it in database. See, all records gone. Because no primary key effect. As there is no primary key, you can't use get method. If you use update method, it will not perform as you expected. So as you have all these issues, consider you need a primary key here. Okay, primary key is mandatory. And one more thing you can see, HBM to DDL we can apply as I said, right? For the primary key problem you can see. Let me drop this table and let me ask Hibernate to create table for me. Create or use update also. Create or update, both will work for you to create table. So I'm asking Hibernate to generate a table. I'm asking Hibernate to generate a table. Okay. As you give an ID here, student ID, see how it will generate. I'm trying to save a record. Before saving it, it need to generate a table. There is no table itself. Have you updated? No data found. Huh. You see, saying no data found, but no table not found, it is not saying. We deleted table, still it is saying no data found means table created. See the table how it is created. You can see here student column, student ID, name, email, address, and the student ID generated it as a primary key. You can see student ID is a primary key field which is auto generated by Hibernate. Okay, let me drop it again. Without a primary key, will it create or not? We'll see. Delete table and try to save the record. Okay. So without primary key means ID column I don't want to use. ID meant for primary key. Without ID, without ID your tags itself not allowing here. So it is saying ID is mandatory. So without ID even you can't create your mapping file. Which means when you ask Hibernate to create tables without the primary key it will not create them. Primary key is such a mandatory field. Without primary key if somebody designed database that is not worth, or it will create a lot of problems. Okay, so without Aadhaar, I mean we have Aadhaar ID, right, which is unique throughout the country. Nobody will have the same ID. When somebody want to identify some person, though many having the same name, same initial, same village or same city, they will identify us with the Aadhaar ID, unique ID. So such a unique ID every table is required. In case if you design yourself a table without primary key, that is a bad practice. Okay, it will create a lot of issues. So you create every time a table with the primary key. which is mandatory. Don't forget it, okay? If you ask Hibernate also can create it for you using HBM to DDL option. Okay, yeah, till here it is fine. Now, without mapping file, using annotations also we will see. Okay, same example with annotation. We will see Hibernate with the annotations. Add same library here. Okay, jar files added. Everything I will copy paste. And one mapping file is extra for us. We will remove it. Here you don't need this mapping file. I am just doing mapping via XML file, right? My ID to student ID, name to student name, email to student email, and this bean to this table. You need not to do that stuff from XML file. Instead, you can use annotations here. First thing, at the rate entity, you can mention here. So your bean will be considered as a Hibernate entity, and use the table annotation and mention your table name here, whichever table name you have here, right? You can mention that table name here. Schema, your DB schema name you can put here. So this mapping is done. The first row mapping is done. Class student is mapping with the student 007 table with this schema. So here itself we did that. This student being class is mapping with this table with this schema. And what about this mapping ID mapped to student ID? That too, this ID column meant for primary key. Primary key. So what is the alternate in annotation? First thing you can use at the rate ID. This at the rate ID is like your ID tag. So which means it is primary key. When you mention ID on top of any field, you can consider it as a primary key. So this ID is primary key, which means your ID column is primary key column. Cool. And in table, the column name is different, student underscore ID. So what you need to do here, mention at the rate column name, student underscore ID. As an alternate for this column attribute, right, we have at the rate column here. So using at the rate column, you can map it. And what about name? Name is mapped to student underscore name. Just a minute. So name field mapped to student name, email field mapped to student email, and address mapped to student address. That's it. So now can I remove this XML file completely? Yes. Just delete it first. No XML based map. Pure annotations. Still here in configuration file we attached our mapping reference. So it will say mapping file not available. So instead of using this mapping resource, right? If If it is a XML file, you can use it. If it is not a XML file, you can use mapping class. You can mention your class name here rather than mentioning your XML file. Directly you can give this class name com.rdu.ems.model.student. That's it. That's it. Okay. So I avoided XML and shifted everything to annotation. And inside configuration file also I just attached my mapping class. And what about configuration? Same configuration will perform or not? We'll see. So I'll just mention here HBML to DDL create, and I'll drop the table also. You can see it will create table for you. If it works, it will create table and it will insert data also. So it is creating student table and inserting the data. Did I execute at the same client? EAO test from annotations. Okay. So it is working. So record got inserted here. Student ID, student name, email address. Student table created and data also inserted. And for handling annotations from latest versions, instead of configuration class Hibernate given one more container, I don't know why it is working because of old version maybe. Usually here we will use annotation configuration container. Acha, is it deprecated? Okay, Kali configuration itself is working then. So configuration itself is working for both annotations and XML approach as well. Okay, cool. So this is how you can utilize annotations also instead of simple XML file. And again, sometimes your table may have more than one primary key also. We will call it as composite primary key. ID, student ID and email also should be unique. If you say not only ID, email and ID combination, I want to make it unique. So I want two primary key combination of student email and ID want to primary key, or student name email combination should be primary key. If I create in such a way, I need to maintain composite bean here. One more composite bean we need to create and we should use it. Okay. So you may go through the examples that we have in the blog. Okay. All the examples we have composite primary key and ID generators. As I said, right, this ID I am inserting, but in real time we never insert IDs manually. So here we have generators also. So here we have generated value annotation. Here we have a generator. You can apply strategy auto. So automatically ID will be inserted. You need not to pair your ID in DO class. You need not to give your input. Usually IDs will be generated automatically. Okay. So let me drop the table and see what will happen when I try to insert. There is no ID at all. So first it is doing select statement. Select one Hibernate sequence is created by default. Sequence dot next value from dual it is getting. So this is how sequences will function in Oracle. Okay. From this sequence it is getting ID, Hibernate sequence ID, and inserting my record. Let's see what data, what ID it might have picked up. So student ID 1. What if I insert one more record? and already table is there, right? Let's keep it update. You better it, right? You better keep it always validate until unless you don't want to create tables. If you want to create tables, you put update. Okay, so update is the safest one. Instead of create, put update one or validate one if you have already tables. Now I am trying to inserting one more record. No id. Run it. So getting next to sequence value and inserting the data. See what id it may have picked up. It depends on the sequence. Generally, the default sequence is started with one, maybe until maximum number it will generate 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It goes on. Okay. So in case if you need your custom sequence, you can create it and configure it. Your own sequence if you have, you can configure it. Your own sequence also. Custom generators also you can implement. You can see that examples as well. Okay. So I think this information is sufficient. Okay, for us to understand Spring now. Now we will integrate Hibernate with the Spring. That integration part we will learn. We will integrate the Spring with the Hibernate. So from this part we learned when I submit data from my form, when I submit data, just a minute. It's okay. So when I submit data from here, when I submit data from my form, data will be submitted to a controller. Controller will read the data, and the data, you know how to create controllers at the rate controller, at the rate service, at the rate DAOs, and you can auto wire services into controllers, DAOs into services. We know that part. So as soon as I get data into controller, whichever auto wired object I have, using that auto wired object I can call methods. So your controller will call service. It will just delegate your data to service. Then service will send the same data to DAO. Once you get the data here, okay, we will use session. Via session we will keep our data into one poso class, and we give that poso class to session, and it will do CRUD operation if it is a plain Hibernate. Okay, if it is a plain Hibernate, you can just auto wire session factory and you can utilize it. Plain Hibernate if you want to use along with Spring. Okay, we will see that first. Same example with the Spring integration we will see. End to end we will create here. Okay, end to end CRUD methods we will create. Spring with Hibernate. Until DAO we will use Spring. From DAO we will use Hibernate. Okay. So first we will create Spring part. Okay. First we will create Spring part. Hibernate, right? We are discussing part of war. Yeah. So let me add libraries. First we will do which coding Spring code, and we will involve Hibernate there so that comfortably you will understand the integration part. Add all the jar files of Spring. So from where we need to start front end. For now, we don't have any front end. We will use simple main method class in place of front end. Okay. From here, we will create controllers, service, DAOs. Okay. Let me create form dot rbu dot. We will make it employee management system or student management system dot controller package, or you may mention it web package. Here I'll put my controllers, and I'll create a service. There I will put my service classes. I'll be creating a DAO. There I'll put my database class, and configurations stuff we will put it under config package. Fine. And our XML file, Spring XML file, used to be there under resources. Packages are fine. Now first thing, when I submit data from front end, I need to read it in controller. So I'll be keeping controller first. I'll be keeping a controller first. Okay, employee controller. So this controller need to read data which is coming from front end usually. Okay, for insert usually in controllers we use post method. At the rate controller, and here we use post method usually if it is a REST. Okay, for now I am not using any front end. I'll be just creating public void post method, and here I'll take my inputs which are coming from front end. Okay, so for employee management system, I need employee data from front end. I need employee data from my front end. ID I don't want. ID I will generate automatically. ID field not required. Name, email, address, salary, phone number. Let's say I have these fields. ID I don't want. As I said, right, IDs are not recommended to take from front end. You generate them. You don't accept it from front end. Okay, so ID field is not required. I will generate it. My table is having ID field, but in front end I don't want it. So read this ID field in a controller. Read all the fields except the ID. Okay, as and when you submit it, you will be having a post method here. It will receive all the data. In MVC, we directly get this data into DTO object. In MVC, we have that facility, but now also we can put it into DTD, DTO, or else you can put individual parameters also here. Instead of sending them individually, you can put it in one object. Why individually you should not put? Basically, one method should not have more than 5 or 6 arguments as per code quality. Just a minute, yes. Yeah. So if I extend like this, how many arguments I need to take? If I have 20 arguments, name, email, address, phone, you know, and the pin code, ABCD, XY, get extra. If you have so many parameters, it looks not good keeping that many arguments in a method. Instead of that, you put the data into DTO. Create one poser class separately, keep data into DTO and pass that DTO here. All parameters you can insert into DTO and give DTO as an input. That is the good approach. So here, generally in MVC, your MVC will take care mapping all this data into DTO, and that DTO will be given as an input. What next? From here, I need to call service. So the same data, whichever is in DTO, you can pass it to your service. So service is having a create method, it will accept a DTO, and Nothing to do. Send the same data to DAO. Send same data to DAO. Save method. From here, pass it to this DAO method. As soon as DAO get your data, you map this data into from DAO to your model object. So you will be having model object, right? Employee bean, employee equal to new employee. Put all that DTO data here. There are many ways to do that. DTO data to employee object you can pass by create your own mappings, or when this DTO column names and your bean column names are same, use the Spring Bean utils. What is that class name? Spring Bean utils. There is a utils class. Spring Bean utils or bean utils something. Dot copy. There is a copy method which will copy from one object to another object. I'll give my DTO input here, and here you can pass your model object. So it will just shift your DTO data into model data. When column names are same, it will help you. There is a helper class in Spring also. It will map this data into this model. So shift it here. Okay, shifting container. One parcel, as a DTO I got here, I need to shift to model because without model, Hibernate will not function. So map your DTO into model here. Then, as already session factory is auto wired here, you need to auto wire it. As session factory is already auto wired here, you open a session from it, call save method, pass that model here. Bus. Your data will go and sit it into database. Finally, it will be inserted into your table, employee table. So first we will create up to here controller, service, DAO. Then we will see how I can auto wire a session factory. For this we need configuration, definitely. We need to create a configuration class. There we need to create a bean @bean for session factory. And this can be auto wired here. That bean session factory can be auto wired here. From this session factory you can get sessions here. Using session you can handle your CRUD operations. Where we do this beans, definitely we'll do under configuration class. Configuration class we will use to create beans. That's it. Your job is done. So now data, do I need to get it name, individual parameters here or DTO? Which one you require? String the name, email, address. This many parameters, does it require to pass? No. Just to remove them, create a DTO. Data transfer object. DTO stands for data transfer object. Maybe if you want, you can create a separate package also for DTOs. com.argue.ems.dto. Create a class. Employee DTO. Put all your properties. String name I want, email I want, address, phone, and importantly, some ID. Acha, ID not required. Anyway, from front end, I need not to read ID. I need name, email, address, phone number only. That's it. Use generate and getters and setters. Generated setters and getters. Take this employee DTO as a input. And what I need to do? From here, this DTO I need to send it to service layer. Finally, shall we return DTO back? We'll do that. So whoever calls it, for them we will give this generated ID also. Like they can see, end user can see which ID generated for him. If you want, like after ticket booking, how you are showing booking ID, ticket ID, same. Okay. So I need to return employee DTO end of the day once my operation is success. So from here I want to call service. So create service class. Next step, service class employee service at the rate service annotation you need to put here. And this employee service you can auto wire into controller. From here you can call service methods. In service I don't have any method. Let's create it. Public employee DTO create employee is my business method. So from here I want to call DAO. But before that, call employee service dot create employee. So this create employee returns a DTO object. Same thing I am returning it. Bus. So once user pass data from front end to post method, from here we are calling service class create method. From here the service class need to call DAO class save method. Employee DAO at the rate of repository public employee DTO save method. Employee DTO as an input I'll get it here, and I need to do save operation. For save I need session factory at the rate auto void session factory. Hibernate jars also included, that's why session factory is available. From this session factory get it, which one session, open session, session will be given to you. Then remaining same as this session dot begin transaction dot begin session dot save. Pass your DTO cannot able to save. You need model class. So create similar to this DTO, create a model class. You know if it is a model, what all you need to maintain. Excuse me. Where is my model package? Nothing yet created. Okay. Com dot rview dot employee management system dot model. Nothing. You can mention model or you can mention entity. Okay. Employee wheel. Mostly same properties. ID, name, email, address. But this is mapping to a table. So you mention that the table name here employee 007. It's up to you, okay? I'm just mentioning it. Employee 007 table name and schema and my ID field at the rate ID. Same names I will use, okay? From even this name email address also. When it is same name, you need not use at the rate column also. Maintain it clean at the rate generated value. You can use strategy, auto, identity, sequence, whatever it is. Let's use auto. Plus employee bean is there. Employee DTO also there, but DTO I can't save. I need a bean. So first shift your data from DTO to employee bean. Create employee bean, employee equal to new employee, and map data from DTO to employee. How bean copy utils or what is that? Bean utils. Spring bean utils dot copy properties. Exactly. Copy property source from where data coming DTO into where you want to move. Uh, okay, so just shifting. I'm shifting data from here to here. DTO to employee mapping. Bean utils will take care. Exactly. Yeah, exactly as I said. Same naming convention. Same names exactly. Whatever I have here, that's why I copied the same exact naming conventions. So as soon as you move your data from DTO to employee, save it. But it will save it. Commit your transaction. It will commit the data into database. And should not forget to close your session. Careful. And finally wanted to return DTO. Same input only given, right? Why DTO required? While giving input in DTO, user will not send any ID. But while you are sending response, transaction object. And I'm calling transaction on it and committing it. So as soon as you save it, you will be getting one auto-generated bean. Auto-generated ID you will be getting into this bean. So again you do this. What? Shift your data from this to this back to DTO. DTO given me data without ID. I'll give data to DTO now with ID. Simple, right? You can return DTO here. Before returning it, set ID also here. DTO dot ID set ID. What is that? Just one field only, na? Already I have the same data. Why I need to copy them? Even bean utils also helping me. It will copy all the data: ID, name, email, address. I don't want all of them. Already my DTO contains it. Yeah. Set ID. Yeah. In user will not send it. I am generating it. So that's why I'm returning to the user with ID. While he is sending data, no ID. While I returning data, I'll send the ID. Okay, just see how it will work. Now service need to call DAO at the rate auto wired employee DAO call return DAO dot say pass your detail. Yes. Yeah, you please go on mute. Okay, let us here. Now, yeah, up to session factory auto white, but where is the session factory to auto white? I did not created that yet, right? So create a session factory here. But to create session factory, I need configuration file also now. So I'll create app config class here at the rate configuration here, configuration at the rate bean here for my session factory. Public session factory, create a session factory. I need to create that. You know how to create it. But before that, I need configuration. Hibernate configuration. Yeah, now I have configuration file. In this configuration file, I have given RKL, DB, everything good. Model is employee. That is also good. Use configuration. CFG is equal to new configuration. CFG dot configure resources slash orchil dot cfg dot xml is my configuration file. What it will do? Configuration dot build a session factory, will build a session factory object. You return it. That's it. Your session factory is available now. And what else I required? Everything is done. But how I can run this application without my Spring container? Here you need your Spring container. So get resources XML file. Okay. So I need to scan all the packages, which all objects my Spring container need to create. First, controller object it should be created. Service object also it should be created. And model object we are creating it. We are giving the life. I mean new keyword we are using to create it. And DO object container need to create it. And your configuration object need to be created. Your at the rate being also created. How many? One configuration one, at the rate being two, and DO object is three, and service object is fourth, controller object is fifth. These five objects it need to create. So five objects need to be created, and service object need to be auto wired here. One auto wiring. In service, DO object need to be auto wired too. In DAO, session factor should be auto wired 3. So 3 auto wirings needs to perform into controller service, into service DAO, into DAO session factory. 5 objects creation, 3 auto wirings need to be performed. That's it. It will do and it will wait for your request in general when you have web interface and all. So it will do all the 5 objects creation and 3 dependency injections, and it will sit relax and it will ask you to enter data. So when it will create, as in when you loaded your XML file into container. Let me write a test class. In MVC, usually you need not to load it into any container. Your MVC framework will load it for you. I will say test main method application context AP equal to new class path XML application context. Load your XML file here. Resources slash spring dot XML. Then application context dot get bean. I need my controller. As I don't have any front end, I want to fetch my controller object, which is created by my container, and I want to send the data here. Employee controller dot post. You need to give DTO input. Which DTO? Employee DTO. So create employee DTO first. Employee DTO is equal to new employee DTO, or let me do this. Just a minute, guys. Let me see which are files which I have. More practical approach I want to show you using Lombok also. You know, in beginning session itself we started with Lombok also. So Lombok is not there. Lombok I must add it sometime back, right? We added it. Let me go to users. Public no, welcome M2 repository. What is the Lombok directory? Com data. I will add Lombok jar also here. Yes, what is the path of Lombok? Project Lombok something, right? Lombok, not inside com. Is it inside info? No. Inside IO? Can someone Google it? Or in downloads also we have this jar, right? Yeah, Lombok jar. That's it. So what I will do, I'll use Lombok here. Remove all the setters and getters. So instead of this much lengthy, at the rate data. Plus, it will provide all the getter setters. You know, right? And class path into my application class path. No, no, maybe it is delaying from your side. Okay, just screen might be frozen. Yeah. So data I added into the bean also. Just from my downloads I added. So wherever you have download, you can add from there. Okay. And what I want to show you here is instead of using this new keyword, I will use builder pattern to set my data. Employee DTO. We have builder pattern also. If you guys remember, or if you have gone through it before, using builder also we can able to build a object. Builder dot, you can add all your fields. ID not required. ID is generating. Name, give your name whichever you want to save. Email, address, what else I have, phone number. It's a builder design pattern. Just go through builder design pattern. Okay, you will be getting it. So basically builder will allow you to access fields. Generally we create a bean and call setter methods to pass the data, right? Instead of that, I'm just using builder pattern to call my properties directly and set the data. Just a, you know, a new way of setting the data. That's it. Correct. At the rate builder. Yes. At the rate builder annotation, you need to add. That's it. So I'm giving my DTO object here, which is setted with all the data. Finally, what I will get as a response, I'll be receiving DTO. From that, you can receive your ID, whichever is generated for you. Call get ID and see which ID it is generated for you. I think we have everything. Run it and see how it will work. Running and failed. Mapping exception. Annotation configuration instance is required. Because while doing Hibernate we used maybe very latest version jars. Here this is lower version maybe. As I said, right, instead of configuration, annotation configuration it was using CFZ equal to new annotation configuration bus and run it. Here Hibernate sequence value, next value from dual long cannot be casted to employee. Who asked to, okay. After DAO save method, we are trying to asking it employee object. Why employee object it will return? It will return your ID only, primary key. JPA usually will return complete object. Okay, here it is returning simple ID. Or else if it is a composite primary key bean, full bean will be returned. Okay, primary key. Primary key, not the entity. Yes. So data got inserted. Finally, ID is 4. Select the star from employee 007. ID, name, everything got inserted. Run it again and again and again and see. One more record will be inserted with ID 5. One more record will be inserted with ID 6. Usually this many times application will not restart. Consider your end user hitting data. Okay, so you'll be having all that records inserted. This is how you can perform end to end Spring with Hibernate. Okay. Once again, if you see the flow, I created a DTO object and sending that DTO as an input to controller post method. From here, my controller post method calling service class create employee method, and that method is calling DAO class save method. DAO class save method fetching session beginning transaction, and from DTO to model object data shifting it is doing here. Then calling sessions dot save method and giving bean as an input. It is giving ID back as a response. Finally, we are committing that particular transaction and closing the session. That's it. And while returning the DTO before setting up the same ID which I return, so that I can see whichever ID is generated for me here. That's it. As simple as that. Okay. Yeah. Just a minute. Yeah. Yeah. Just a minute. So yeah, that's it for today. And tomorrow we will see, instead of using traditional session factory, we will use Hibernate integration ORM class here. Spring given integration class, we will use that. As of now, we did not use any Spring given integration. Directly Hibernate style only I am implementing, and integration we achieved via this at the rate b. You may consider it is the integration part. Integration is happening here. Integration happened here. Tomorrow we will see. Okay, both are different frameworks if you see. Okay, so here we are trying to integrating Hibernate with Spring, both linked here. We are fitting nuts and bolts with the Hibernate and Spring here. Both are integrated here in this area. Okay, this is pure Hibernate code. We brought that here. We created session factory and we are keeping it in live until our container shutdown using at the rate B. So your session factory will be available throughout the application until you shut down it. And I know using session factory what I should do in my DAO classes. So I just auto void my session factory and do it. Same Hibernate approach. Okay. So they have given two integration classes. In addition to this, using them, we can minimize this. Okay. We can minimize this part. We are opening session, beginning transaction, saving it, committing it, closing it. This many lines not required to write. As we learned it from JDBC, how we avoided open connection and opening or creating statements, closing connections, closing statements, all that stuff how we avoided, right? The same thing we do here. Okay, yeah, we'll see that tomorrow.